Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Race Analysis with TrainerRoad. We have some new faces, well, one familiar face with us this week.
Howdy, guys.
This is Jacob Gerhardt from the Cliff Bar team, forgive me.
Howdy, yeah.
And Pete Morris from the Cliff Bar team.
Back again.
Yes, also a product manager here at TrainerRoad. These gentlemen just raced the district championships for Northern California and Northern Nevada up at Davis at the I guess at this point it's becoming very well known, the Davis 4th of July Criterium that goes on there. Big P1-2 field, meaning pro Cat 1, Cat 2 field.
Yep.
And you guys are also a team, unlike what we saw in the last team trial, in the team time trial of it falling apart. Hopefully we can learn some stuff from some team tactics in this case. We're going to dig into team tactics and also a whole lot of bike handling stuff and plenty of other things inside a real-life pro P1-2 Criterium. So it should be some interesting stuff. I guess before we get started, though, Jacob, can you give people a little bit of a background on how you got into cycling or like what brought you to the point where you actually wanted to race bikes like this?
Yeah. I was a big runner for a long time, hurt my knee, classic story. Started riding road bikes and mountain bikes. Kind of fell in love with it. Started racing a little bit when I was about 15, 16 in Northern California, actually. Raced a lot through end of high school into college. Started racing for local teams. Ended up on Cliff Bar probably, I think it was 5 years ago. Have been racing around the U.S. with Cliff Bar for the last 5 years.
Nice.
Yeah, we mostly do, well, pretty much exclusively criteriums.
Yeah.
We don't race longer than 90 minutes very often, but that's how I like it.
If any of you guys have listened to previous Cliff Bar episodes where we've had these guys on at their team camps or anything else, and most of those, Jacob's been close in the background just without a microphone. So we also have Miles Lamont with us too. He's off camera and off mic, but he was in this race and joining us as well. We had GoPros on Pete and Jacob's bikes, so we'll be able to see the point of view from their perspective during the race, hence why Miles didn't have GoPros in this case, so he's just sitting on the sideline.
You got to move those handlebars, Miles.
So I guess let's talk about the course. Pete, do you want to lay out a little bit about like what the course is like?
Yeah, it's in downtown Davis, kind of the cutesy California downtown. The good parts and bad parts about this one is it was a lot of turns, which was pretty cool. There's not that many turny crits. The pavement was really bad. It's like classic, just shredded downtown pavement with potholes everywhere and seams and all that. So the nice part of it, I think it was 6 turns. It's a big L shape and a ton of potholes and gutters and like banked turns. I think there's even some brick.
Yeah, there's a couple of brick crosswalks.
Yeah.
I think 2 or 3.
Those keep things spicy.
Yeah. A lot of cracks.
And the start-finish straight is the long straight, and it's maybe 20 seconds or something like that. So
wow.
It's pretty turny.
It's like what, a half mile long and 6 turns and a half mile. It's pretty close, or I guess nearly 0.6 miles.
Yeah.
That's a lot of turning. Which basically, if you see a course like that, what are you guys thinking of beforehand?
We were talking about how excited we were. It makes it so there's a lot more. You're able to hang out in a race like this for sure. You can kind of bide your time in a turny race. You don't have to try necessarily as hard. Those big, long 4-corner crits, you always have to go fast to stay up. And this one, you just have a little more. It's like it's barely anything, but it's a quarter of a second or a third of a second or a half a second every turn that you're not pedaling, which makes a big difference in the long run.
Right. Okay, cool. So we have power data on Pete's bike. On Jacob's bike, there was a problem with the data. It didn't come out clear. So we're not even going to put that on screen because otherwise it would just be strange for all of y'all. It just sits at 0 forever, then every once in a while spikes. So, but Pete, can you give people an idea of your fitness level in terms of like power to weight ratio?
Yeah. Somehow I could just keep getting a little slower. I'm about, I'd say 350 watt threshold or 340, 350, something like that. And I weigh 200 pounds. And that's it. Yeah.
It's a point of reference. And Jacob, for you, roughly, so then people can get an idea of you, what's roughly your threshold power to weight ratio?
Probably about the same. I weigh a little less, and I'm sitting right now about between 340 and 355.
Okay. That's where you float around in between.
I like
there.
that soft curve.
Well,
Depending on how much coffee I've had.
Yeah. I guess you should just get into it, huh? So we'll play the footage here. So for those that don't know, Northern California, the P1-2 scene here, it's a fast region, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing like a lot of teams. You'll see like the Mike's Bikes guys. You'll see plenty of folks from different teams. They're fast folks, although you may not see them on TV regularly. They're still very fast racers. Did this race, so being a short race like this and being a state championship, that changes the dynamic a bit. A bit more is on the line. Did it start hard?
Actually, that's kind of what killed us in this one. It didn't start that hard. 3 or 4 guys went pretty hard from the gun. I think this is about when I noticed that something's going on the front. And so I sort of volunteered myself to take care of the first half of the race since I wasn't sure how I'd feel for the last half of the race.
There you go, Pete. You can see moving up on the inside.
So just to kind of keep everything under control. But yeah, a couple guys got off nice and early and got a gap because we weren't really on it for the first 5 laps, and then that was the difference. That's what kind of shaped the race. So definitely not what I would have expected. And usually it starts pretty hard in NorCal. A lot of people think that it's make or break time, right? The first 5 minutes is when you're going to win the race. So,
and are you moving to the front right now?
Yeah.
Or are there guys up the road?
I think there's already guys up the road.
Wow, that quick, huh?
So that's sort of the problem. Is
oh yeah, you can see him. Up there.
You can see him up there. And so I figure I might as well try to shut it down, especially if I'm already at the front. And yeah, pedaling hard on the front. This is when I realized it was windier than I thought it was. It was kind of breezy that day, and pedaling on the front like this, I was like, wow, this is going to be pretty hard. So then I stopped worrying about those guys quite so much. And I was like, there's no way they're going to stick it. But I thought I would still. We had a couple heavy hitters from our team. There were 7 of us there, and so a few of us were going to see what we could do for the first half, like make it hard and at least race the race.
Yeah. And if you look at this, it was single file that whole
already.
It's already single file with Pete stringing it out there.
So what are you doing, Jacob, at this point? You know, Pete's up the road. Pete's, I should say, not up the road, but he's at the front of the pack and he was drilling it. Was it like a pre-planned strategy that you were just going to sit in the back, or were you just letting Pete do his thing and then trying to stay close? What was your strategy?
Well, we weren't really expecting guys to go up the road from the gun like that. So since I saw Pete and one of our other teammates, I think Stefan was up there as well, near the front, and they were taking care of it. So there wasn't really anything I needed to do besides save some matches. I'd never seen this course before, so I kind of dedicated the first few laps to feeling out the corners, being relaxed, trying to save it.
Checking out lines.
Yeah, seeing where I wanted to be for the most part, seeing where you could pass people in the corners. And it was really, even though Pete was drilling it on the front, I was probably sitting 20th wheel, and I wasn't hurting at all. It was pretty easy back there. But when you're in the wind in this particular race, it was a pretty windy day too. So up at the front, it was significantly harder than sitting 15, 20 wheels back.
And Pete, you're still sitting second wheel in this group here. There are riders up the road, of course, but you're still sitting second wheel.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, I want other people to work with me, and if they see me up there, then I'm hoping they'll slot through and take pulls.
Okay. And so you're kind of like selling yourself at the front. You're kind of like trying to advertise the move a bit, to get people up there.
And I figure if someone gives up or stops pulling, I can always take a pull. But if people keep coming around me to take pulls, all the better, and I'm in a great spot. So kind of, I was already not worried, but doing that lap hard, I was thinking there's no way a breakaway is going to stick, right? So I was thinking, well, it's a lot of work up there and we're not getting anything. We're not represented in that move. So let's just see who works and see who's like willing to race this race.
Yeah, you can see that it's single file up in the front, Pete. From you, it's still, looking at the back camera for you, it's still stretched out to single file, but there you go, putting in a hard dig.
Yeah, and that's, again, just that guy eases up. And so I still don't want that move to be up there. It's more work for us to chase, and since I told everyone I would take care of the beginning of the race, it's still sort of up to me. And so I'm still trying to work pretty hard to bring that move, at least keep it there. Like, I don't want them to get more time because I opted off. So, but that kind of ignited the field, and you'll see that then now if you guys go past and then I get a little easier ride in 6th wheel or 8th wheel, then getting that second wheel.
And there those guys go. They're filling in like you were saying. And Jacob, for you, it looks like Owen, your guys' sprinter, is with you.
Yeah, we were kind of rolling around together, kind of feeling it out. When you're in a position like that where when you're around your teammates, you can kind of help each other in the corners. Pete, you'll see this later on, but Pete and I kind of do this. But you can kind of let a little space open up, so someone's not going to come through on the inside. If it's your teammate, if you know your teammate's behind you or in front of you, you can make it. You can make the ride easier if there's two of you together.
And that's a big takeaway. Like if you can ride next to your teammate and you both give each other just a little bit more space, and then one person's always pulling back in, and you know that person's still going to do what they're supposed to do. It makes it. I mean, it's not a lot easier, but 10% or 20% over and over makes it much better.
You can see how rough the surface is. I mean, we'll get into that later, I'm sure, but you can see how rough it is. There's a lot of jarring going on with these bikes. Did you run lower pressure for that? And did you anticipate that and change the tire pressure at all?
I'd raced this race a few times. I hadn't raced it in a couple years, and they always changed the course. I think last time I raced this, they actually ran it in the other direction. But the pavement's always pretty bad. And since we get those free laps, I always opt for lower pressure, and if I flat. But you would get bounced around a lot if you were running too high. So I ran 80 in the front and rear.
And a 200-pound rider, that's a lot.
That's not that much. Yeah, that's not that much. And I probably, knowing what I know now, I probably would have run 75.
I did. I think it's like 78 to 80 in the front and 80 in the back.
That's awesome. That's way lower than what most people would think.
Well, and it just helps so much for turning, especially on a course like this where you can be leaned over in a corner and hit something that you're not expecting because you're not looking at the road in front of you.
That first corner, there was 2 bot dots on the right through the line where you really wanted to take. And sometimes there was guys next to you and you just ran over the bot dots because that was all it was, and you're going 30 miles an hour.
Yeah. And your tire might jump 1 or 2 inches, but if you're running 80 psi, it's going to grab.
Yeah.
You don't really worry about it. Your foot's dug down on the outside already.
Pete, it looks like you did your patented roll through the outside carry momentum deal.
Yeah, and that's just keep pedaling, right? As soon as someone stops pedaling, you might as well, if you've already got pressure on the pedals, just keeping it rolling. You get a free attack, I think. Like if someone else would have been on the front, I would have had to pedal exactly that hard anyways. And so that move's still up there, and I'm still, like I said, I'm not worried about it. At this point, I'm not worried about it sticking. But every time we slow down, they'll get 5 seconds, and that's just not something I want to give away for free. And yeah, I think looking back at the data, I raced the first 10 minutes pretty hard. And that's what I said I would do.
Yeah, 400 watts nearly for the first bit there was your normalized power.
Yeah.
So, looking at a threshold of 350, that's hard. That's a hard start right there.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because you were carrying kind of that, you were keeping the tide high, right? Like you weren't letting it drop down.
Yep. And then it's just, there's Mike's bikes coming up next to me, and I thought they had made the move, but I didn't think. They sort of always want to stack it, so I always figured they would keep it close enough to send more guys up, or I don't know. It just didn't seem like. I remember we were all talking to each other, and every time we would ride by, we would talk, and we all weren't worried about the breakaway. We just were trying to decide how we were going to approach kind of the last half of the race.
You figured the break was going to get brought back in.
Yeah,
for sure.
What was the team strategy? Were you guys looking to deliver Owen for a sprint, or
either get someone up the road like Stefan in a breakaway, Stefan or I or whoever, and then if that didn't happen, Owen was for sure a guy for the sprint. And towards the end of the race, if there's still a break, whoever's left with any legs. Basically, either bridge up to it or do some work to pull back those seconds.
Got it.
Yeah, and we had a couple big strong guys. Like we were saying, I think if with 1 or 2 laps to go is when we were going to try to take over. There's enough turns that if Stefan and I and Jacob and JD was there and Jox was there, we had a lot of fast guys. So if we were still there at the end of the race, we could have made it fast enough that Owen would have a pretty good sprint. So we were definitely biding our time more in this race. Like we usually race more aggressively than this, and this was the first time where we had purposely kind of tried to save a bunch for the end, just to roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah, and we were talking all throughout this race, like, okay, let's just. And you were getting information from the sidelines, like, okay, the break has 20 seconds, 25 seconds, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's just let them roll. we can take that back in the last 10 laps.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Looks like a tight turn. Right
Yeah,
there.
I saw Owen, and I hadn't talked to him yet in the race, and so I pretty much jammed him in that. But I was trying to get up to make sure that he felt good, and if every time you ride by your teammate, you ask how you're doing, the worst they can say, or it always is more information and always tells you. So if someone's like, shakes their head or a thumbs down or something, then you have a much different strategy all of a sudden. So if every time you ride by your teammate, you say, "How are you?" or
you get a status check.
You get a status check.
Especially if you're
looks like he gave you either a thumbs up or he pushed the rider to the side there, let him know he was there.
Especially in the first 15 or 20 wheels. If there's two of you up there and one of you isn't feeling good, then it's almost your responsibility to make sure you're the one covering the next move.
Yeah.
Or putting a little work in.
That makes sense. Some interesting things that I see too is it looks like a lot of these guys, when you're coming into turns, it looks like a lot of them are so the turns are tight, and you'll see riders dive in pretty deep on the inside of you guys. Is there any sort of do you guys feel like when riders dive in like that on the inside of you, is that a bad move, or is that just par for the course and that's to be expected?
I think it's sort of both, right? Like sometimes there's no option. You have to dive the turn, and some people do it more often than necessary. It's if you are guarding the inside, or if you have the inside line, it's up to you to protect it. So I think you'll see Jacob and I swing further inside and then drop back out to the race line, and that's just to protect someone from coming on the inside. It doesn't matter. We're all a little more loose at the beginning, and you don't care as much. One rider doing it doesn't matter as much, but definitely near the end when we're focused on getting to the front, you just don't let anyone by as you're kind of clawing through the field, and that's when you protect more. But you'll see, even I dive the inside. I mean, it's not...
Yeah.
It's the harder way to do it. That's the other thing is you dive the inside, then you have to sprint out of the corner to get back up to speed.
Exactly. Especially on this course, there was... probably 80% of the laps I did, I was on the outside on 5 of the 6 corners. And it was great because you could pedal through half the corners, and the other ones you could just kind of coast and then keep your momentum. If you do 2 or 3 more pedal strokes than the other guys next to you going into the corner, you work a lot less coming out of that corner.
Right. Yeah. You can kind of, and it doesn't have to be like you're jamming on the pedals coming in to that turn. You can just do a few more easy pedal strokes and carry more momentum.
Yeah. And it's helpful, again, if you're around a teammate, you can kind of let up and let that little gap open, a minimal gap, and then roll the momentum that you have as the guy in front of you breaks into the corner.
Yeah.
And then you can both kind of protect that and run those corners a lot quicker.
If you watch Jacob and I even looking at it, we always have like 3 feet in front of us, right? And it's just to get those 2 more pedal strokes in going through the corner. And then when everybody sprints out, it's just barely easier.
It's not as hard for you.
Just not as hard.
It takes the edge off it a bit, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like, so every time you come down this finish straight, what's the wind like coming down this? Because it looks like riders really pick up the speed every time down this. I mean, part of that is probably also because there's so many turns on the other parts of the course, but was it headwind, tailwind, crosswind?
It was sort of a cross tail along the start-finish line, with everybody getting blown to the right side of the road.
Right.
And so if you could stay sheltered and stay next to that fencing along the right side of the road, it was you could get pushed in every once in a while, but it was much easier rather than you can see later in the race, you'll see guys worry and they'll start to sprint up the left side of the start-finish straight, and it's just so much work for nothing. It's just...
Because they aren't sheltered by the wind.
Yeah, and they feel like that's the only time they can move up because they can't move up in the corners, so they'll move up on the start-finish straight by sprinting, and it's just a lot of work.
And oftentimes you see those same guys, they'll pass a few guys going into the corner, hit their brakes, and then they're passed again by another 5-10 guys. And so it takes a lot more effort.
Yeah, if you're gonna bring more momentum in, try to carry it too, right? Like
exactly, yeah.
Do whatever you can to not lose that momentum.
Well, if you're rolling into a corner with momentum, if you take a line that you already know, you can use that momentum. Whereas taking a new line or taking a congested line, you lose a lot of it. Yeah,
exactly. Now, every time that I see you guys come into this one or into that turn specifically, like you said, where the bot dots are. I see, if you look at the other riders in their handlebars, you see them hit some serious gaps. And then on this straightaway, you can see some serious bumps. How do you guys hold? I've noticed, Pete, you like to hold your hoods a lot, and a lot of people say during bumps, you want to hold the drops because it's more secure. Do you still ride on the hoods in that sort of scenario?
Yeah, and I think you don't grab the hood. You don't grab anything super hard, right? Like it's the same as mountain biking, where the looser, more relaxed your grip is, the better you're going to deal with all that. So it's the guys that have, fully tensed upper bodies. Just that's what really rocks them.
Yeah.
We were talking about it. We just did a little spin ride, and my arms and shoulders are pretty sore from just the bumps.
The jarring.
Right? Yeah, the jarring. But that's because I was absorbing most of it.
Yeah.
In my arms and my shoulders.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing so when I'm looking at you guys too, when you're cutting through all this and you're going across those bricks, are you like double apexing because of the brick when you cross it? And what I mean by that would be like coming into the turn, rolling in normally, and then when you go over the brick, kind of easing up on your angle and then leaning again? Or are you just rolling through the whole thing? What do you do when you cross those little brick walkways like that?
It's kind of nice. There's two in a row. So there's like you cross the first brick threshold and then the other one, and that's the two back-to-back turns. It's the L of the L.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But you're actually going about as slow. That's the slowest part of the whole course. And so you're not as worried about going really fast and kind of sliding through that. Like here, watch everybody ease up. And so no one's pedaling into it. So you really don't have to worry. So then, and you see us kind of cross both crosswalks.
Yeah.
And then everybody pedals hard again. So there's sometimes in the race where we would pedal through that hard. And I think later that's where most of my attacking is through those brick walkways because
that's where I got off the front.
It's just
10 laps.
Yeah. Most people don't want to pedal there anyways.
And also on that exact same corner, the curb kind of comes down and comes out into the road about a foot, and then there's about an inch gap before the cement or the concrete blacktop started. And if you took the inside there, you could actually ride that smoother cement line, and no one ever rode it because you had to go across one gap, get on the cement, and keep going. Which was I rode that line half the race because there was never anyone riding that.
So you're kind of looking for like decisive lines almost, or ones where people have to commit to them. They're maybe a little bit more tricky, and that would cause a person perhaps pause when they're trying to follow your move, right?
Yeah, and even just it's always open, right? Like if no one else ever takes it, then you always have an option.
Yeah. I just saw Miles, by the way. Miles that's in the room with us, but not on camera. I just saw him. He's on the back of you, Pete. He's riding behind you. And I saw somebody was kind of trying to nose in and take your wheel. And Miles, you just authoritatively moved into position, kind of like shut it down. Even though it's not the end of the race, do you guys still try to, do you have racers within the team that are actively trying to shelter or protect you guys, or do you just naturally kind of work together and try to stick together? Or do you not care about that and just kind of let everybody ride where they ride?
We do a pretty good job of riding together. And I think at bigger races, it makes a bigger difference. So if you can't ride together at a bigger race, then this is the perfect time to practice. And just sticking near your teammates. Most of the time, someone's trying to move up the field, and if you have a teammate moving up, it's pretty much a free ride. All you do is stick on the wheel, and you kind of get drugged through the field with no work from your end. Yeah. So since I was moving up, Miles, we get to pass 10 guys or whatever, and Miles didn't have to do anything other than stick with me and elbow guys off my wheel.
It's a smart way to do it.
Which is totally worth it.
It's cool to see, too. I just noticed in one of the turns here, you're coming through, and the gap opens up because everybody surges really hard. Pete, you keep your speed steady, and then you end up rolling through and even passing a few people, coming back through.
Oh, yeah, I'm on Jacob's wheel.
Yeah, there he is.
I'll be honest, like, I'm not in that good a shape, so every time I go harder than I want to, I can tell. And so if I can roll out of the corner easier and just keep pedaling longer, I can really do 350 or 400 watts all day. Well, that's a total lie. But
350.
Where if I roll out of the corner and then pedal 5 more seconds at threshold, I'm totally fine. Doing that a lot really just saves my legs for the end.
Right.
And we really were. I would say this is the first time where actively we were planning on sitting in and seeing what we could do, especially once the move went and other people are working. We kept saying, look, there's still guys chasing, there's still guys working on the front. Like, we might as well sit around and hang out.
Let them do the work.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where a group's up the road. Ooh, it looks like it's getting tight into that turn. Pete was getting shoved around back there. But this is a situation where a group's a few riders are up the road. You guys want them to get brought in, but you're trying to make sure that you aren't the ones doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, if there was another, I forgot who it was, but there was a few guys putting in a lot of work on the front. Whereas if me being up there contributing isn't going to bring back that break single-handedly.
Yeah.
Whereas I might need that energy later on in the race to bring the move back or bridge up to the move or what have you.
It's cool that Miles and Pete, you guys are giving each other room and talking. You can see that off the back of Jacob's camera right now.
And look how much room we give each other.
Yeah, it's different.
And then we slot in, and Miles takes the hard way to get to the front, or like the hard way to get back up to the field. And actually, Miles and I are pretty similar riders, so it's really nice when you're next to someone who rides the same as you. It's the easiest way to race.
You just did that same thing where you rolled into that turn a little more, and you were able to just scoot right in. That was clever.
And see, even we've got the gap rolling into the hard corner, and then you hit the real bumpy pavement.
That was a ballsy move there, Jacob. You kind of let it run up the gutter there on the side, darn near in the gutter.
Yeah, in that gutter there was a little crack. You jump over the gap, and you could pass 5-10 guys going in there, and then jump back over that crack and corner into that corner, and it was pretty smooth outside line, and you basically went from one gutter to the next gutter, and it was one of the easiest lines to pass people the whole race. And Pete was doing it the exact same way.
Yeah, especially at the end of the race, and guys stopped once it got strung out and people were getting tired taking that outside line. You would have to bunny hop over the line and then ride the smooth pavement. There was they replaced a pipe or something, so it was 20 feet of fresh asphalt, and then you'd pop back over the seam.
Nice.
And then take the turn.
Corner. So you guys are genuinely analyzing every square inch of this course and using that.
Yeah.
Well, there was portions like that portion and the other one we talked about that can really work to your advantage.
Yeah.
Whereas the start finish straight, it was pretty good pavement. There was a few bumps, but it didn't really matter where you were. Yeah. But there were certain things that you could use to your advantage that might be more a little sketchier line, but you could, if you knew how to ride it, you could really save a lot of energy.
I commonly find that a distracted mind is always lazy, in the sense that when you have a visual separation on a road, in other words, asphalt ends, gutter begins, there's nothing technically stopping you from going in the gutter and riding there.
Yeah.
But because there's a visual separation and because we're focused on something else, the brain doesn't even think or do the extra work to think maybe I can go over there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's already, there's a nice path set in front of you. Why would you go off the path, right?
Yeah. And it might even be more rough where you're at, but it's simply in our minds, we ride on the street, not in the gutter, right? Those little things that you can do that it can really at least make a person uncomfortable or give you an advantage.
Yeah. And I think that's nice, especially in the beginning of a race where it doesn't really matter wherever you are in the pack, just notice those little things. So later on in the race when you actually have to move up or you got to put the work in, then you're already comfortable riding those lines.
So you're exploring, you're kind of
trying new lines, trying other things. In the first corner I know there was a manhole cover right on the outside, and it was no problem. You hit it and leaned over, and you weren't going to slip or anything. But a lot of people avoided it, and if you rode over it, it was an open line every time.
That's awesome. This is why I like crit racing. I think I just discovered another one of the reasons why I enjoy crit so much is because line choice totally plays a part.
It does.
And Pete, it looks like you're moving up toward the front. Is it just because you got further back than you wanted? Do you remember it?
And I think is that Jacob behind me?
Yeah.
We had just said, I think I just said to Jacob, something along the lines of, I don't think we need to do anything, and we're going to wait till it slows up. As soon as it slows up, we're both going to hit it and get back up to the front. And you could kind of feel, it's one of those feelings where the race, it's strung out and strung out and strung out, and all of a sudden we'll turn a corner and it'll just fan. And we're lazy enough that we wait for it to slow down to move up. It's
Or smart
just
enough.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's inevitably going to happen.
Yeah, there's not enough fast guys to keep this strung the whole time. So you just wait. And our teammate JD, who's in this race, taught me a long time ago that it'll always eventually slow down, and if it doesn't, it doesn't matter anyways. So if you just wait for it to slow down and then you really jump on that. So if you're paying attention and watch for it to fan out, and then you actually do your hard effort, then you just passed 50 guys for one thing. And so Jacob and I are right next to each other and just waiting for it to slow down. But we were still talking a lot during this point. Always
Communicating and working your way in.
Yep.
It's interesting to see how many riders end up coming out of these turns. They enter narrow and then drift wide. Something I keep seeing on a lot of your guys' lines is you actually enter a little wider, and then in many cases you actually exit a little differently. You're taking different lines than the pack, even if it's just a subtle thing. And it's not like an offsetting thing for danger, but that's got to be advantageous just because it gives you open space if you need it, right?
Yep.
And without necessarily sacrificing a draft.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just barely, even if it's 10%, that's always what I'm going for. There was a couple times where they would start too hard out of the start finish. They would, the three guys in front of me would sprint for some reason, and I'm definitely not going to sprint on the start finish straight with 30 laps to go. And guys behind me would freak out, and one of the times I said something like, "Oh man, we're not going to catch back on," and three guys came around me and closed the gap.
Awesome, there you go. That's all you
so
do.
it's I don't know. I'm just never going to go that hard until you have to. So there's guys sprinting all the time. If you're ever sprinting in a race and you're not winning, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Something that you brought up there was how you basically just, said, "Oh man, we're not going to catch him." You basically, psychological influence, right? You're manipulating people, right?
Yeah.
And that's game. That's fair game in a crit, right?
I think so. I think it used to happen to me, right? I went through my paces and I used to get rolled. One of my first big breakaways, I got rolled for every single preem for 45 minutes, and I just had no idea what happened at the end of it.
Here, kid, take the chain loop.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so it's not malicious. It's just the way it is, right? I'm not going to do it, and if someone else wants to do it, more power to them.
Earlier in a podcast, on the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast, Nate was mentioning a situation where two riders went up the road from a different team, and then he heard a separate team asking one of their teammates, "Hey, did those guys lap us already?" He's like, "Yeah, they already lapped us. It's over." And they were just off the front, right? So you don't have to. I mean, it's fair. Right? It's bike racing, and it's everyone's job to stay alert and stay on top of what's happening. And if somebody can manipulate you with a simple statement like that, that's your bad, right?
One of the teams that made the move, one of the guys asked me, one of the teammates back in the field said, "Did the move get brought back?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did." And he was like, "Oh no," and started yelling at his teammate like they were going to get to the front. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it got brought back.
That's the way
it could have.
We're in the same boat.
Yeah. Jacob, you just did some dodge moves around the hay bales, and it looks like you're working up to the pace of Pete. And the race is kind of fattening up here, in terms of it's not purely single file, but the pace looks pretty high. People look way more nervous. Yeah. Looking at the power data from around this time in the race, your power data, Pete, it looks like you had a constant time period around here. Or I should say there was less down and more just kind of constant.
I also think we were riding in it pretty smooth here. We were in a good spot in the pack. We were... Yeah, people were taking good lines in this towards the front here.
Yeah, actually, the closer you were to the front of the race in this race, the easier it was.
The more consistent your power could be.
Yeah, so less spikes, but less zeros. And a lot of this was when there's constant pressure in the power file, you can tell that I'm trying to move up, there's forward momentum all the time where I'm purposely passing person after person after person.
Yeah, and if you look at, we just passed 3 or 4 guys
just rolling
in that one straight.
Yeah.
And so we'll just keep doing that. And that's if all it takes is one turn or two turns where you give up and you don't pass someone, or something bad happens and you just lost, multiple laps worth of moving up. So a lot of this is I'm trying to figure out a way to how can I keep passing. Oh, I think this is where I might slide on the last corner. Watch this.
Get a little
I
drifty.
dive in a little bit, and not quite.
Darn near close to that guy.
And this A-main guy behind me said something like, that was pretty good. And I said, yeah, I still got it. And then we rode off. And so I always think those shared moments like that are pretty good. There's not very many races where you get kind of like a kudos going through a corner.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a rider in here, Stefan. He's like Mr. Long Bomb, and he can, if you tell him to pedal hard, he'll just do it, right? And he can pedal very hard.
Very hard.
Was he part of your fallback plan? Meaning, like a rider that could really go long, maybe chase up to to the group up the road. Was he part of the plan, or?
Yeah, usually Stefan and I are the two kind of power riders, and so I told him I would take the first half and he just had to hang out and just wait for the second half of the race.
Looks like he's right in front of Jacob, and there he goes.
Yeah,
down some watts.
And so that's actually a good move. See, he just passed 5 guys for a few hard pedal strokes, but I was pedaling hard there too, right? Like he gets a lot of gain for one move, and then he gets momentum into those next 2 corners too. But yeah, the plan was Stefan would either be the last man standing for Owen, or hopefully catch one of the late race moves. And if there's 3 or 4 guys with Stefan, I feel pretty good that he can outkick them, and they're definitely not going to trouble him that much in the breakaway. So yeah, he was kind of not plan B, but alternate plan A. Yeah. And yeah, definitely he was going to do the last couple laps for Owen also, because he has a pretty good finishing power.
Yeah, he's a good for a long time.
He's a good drag, and then he can still sprint at the end. So, and it was good. He did a good job of kind of keeping his powder dry.
Yeah, not getting too excited too early.
Not getting too excited.
And towards the end, I think he did put in some power to bring back a few seconds on that breakaway once we realized that they're not going to come back.
Yeah, and it looks
quickly.
like the pace is pretty hard right now.
Yeah,
right?
it's definitely picking up. It's getting strung out.
And in those situations, are you guys, when it's single file like that and it's really getting fast, and let's just say in this situation, were you eager to move up and to see what's going on at the front that's causing that? Or were you just, let's sit in here and then once it slows down, we'll make moves forward? How do you play that?
I think if it's single file, unless they're slowing down, like going to the outside on the first corner, so you can see them kind of fan out at the front of the race. So I'm thinking I got to move up a little bit because they're fanning out. And this is where you just take that.
That's a time, if it's fanning out like that, that's a time where you could.
Right, you just keep pressure on the pedals.
Yeah, Pete just passed 5 guys right there because they fanned out and he had the momentum on the outside.
And then it's back single file. Right. But yeah, there's not very many chances where it's single file like that and I can move up. I usually just put my head down and bide my time. If there's other guys making it that hard at the front, I'm not going to make it from where I am to the front and still be able to do anything. And that should be almost true for everybody. So if it really is hard, just hang out.
It looks like for you, Jacob, it's like fattening out by the point where you're at in the race.
Yeah.
So you're just letting that unfold. You're not panicked, right?
Yeah, Pete left me there and moved up a few spots. I could still see where he was, and it just hadn't. Those doors had shut by the time I got to him, so I wasn't stressed. I knew at some point I was gonna have my time to move up, and since Pete was moving up there, he was gonna cover those next moves there, and so I was basically just hanging out, waiting for that time to open up to pass some riders.
That seems smart too. To when you're in that situation, instead of pedaling, instead of working hard in those situations, making sure that you're resting. It looks like
exactly.
Pete, you just did the momentum roll hard through that one. You passed a lot of people through the turn. And
did you see they were four wide on that straight that straight, and that was actually a little headwindy, sort of cross headwindy. So I don't know. It was. I think since the move hadn't come back yet, I was starting we weren't getting worried, but you figure there's got to be something happening, and maybe it's jump across or maybe it's help pull it back or whatever. But getting closer to the front, especially, I think we're nearing the midpoint of the race, maybe.
Yeah, right there.
So now it was like, well, let's assess, let's see who's working, and let's see. This is Chris Reichert in front of me with the gold wheels, and he was kind of one of the guys. Stefan was supposed to key off him. We were pretty sure that he was going to make the break if it did happen.
He missed the early one.
He missed the early one, but he had a teammate in it.
And I assume you expected him to kind of look at how relaxed he is in that section. That's a cool thing, how he's just stretching out his hand, relaxing.
Yep.
I think a lot of riders keep so much tension in themselves that you don't necessarily need to do that. You can take some time to even relax a hand. So you're figuring that also, like, if you mark him, he's probably going to make a move at some point, or he would be a likely person to make a move up to that break. And so he could give you a free tow. Maybe.
Exactly, that can be a free ride to the break even.
I even told JD that I might not be able to go if he goes. Like, I'd just moved up a few times, and so I told JD that if Reichert goes, that he should follow him. Like, I figured Reichert might counter me out of this.
There you go.
And so that's where you just go through those crosswalks again, and it just makes a little bit of a difference.
Well, those people they liked the line you cast there, but it looks like the rest of the pack also liked that idea.
Yeah, and that's where we were going slow enough that I can't really snap the field like that.
Yeah.
And the break was still up the road, so any seconds that you can take back at this point are beneficial, whether you're working hard or like Pete here wasn't working all that hard because he just rolled those corners to get to the front.
And then, you made the move, and then I assume you realized that, like, everybody, I'm not getting away from anybody here.
And you just look, this course is really nice. There's so many turns that I think it's better to look under your arm when you're going through a turn. You can see way more people. You get a better kind of view of what's happening behind you.
See shadows.
Yeah, and just you see the array of everybody or their side profile, and you can see that everybody's working hard and wants to stay there. There's Stefan.
So is that why you moved off the front there?
Yeah, exactly, and hope that someone else takes up. It's kind of like kicking the hornet's nest, where if you can ignite it, people will still think it's a good idea to counter you, and then the pace stays up. So.
Yeah, and like you said, Stefan really moved through fast right there.
Yeah.
Looks like he was going for it. So at that point, you're hoping, I assume, that Stefan's going to be able to actually bridge up to that.
Yeah, or even just keep the speed high, right? It's like every time we slow down, we give the breakaway more. So every time we can do a little bit of something on the front to keep the pace high, it's better.
Especially towards the second half of the race here, we are all a lot more active at the front, whether it's taking back a few seconds or trying to create a breakaway. It's like we're realizing that the break is still up the road. We need to put some cards down and do something.
And Pete, you're letting riders fill in front of you.
Yeah,
why are you doing that?
Owen and Stefan were up in that 15-man split or whatever, and I'm not going to bring him back.
Right.
And it's the start-finish straight, which is the hardest straight for me anyway, so I might as well just sit up and get an easy 15 seconds. And it doesn't do. It's what if everybody looks at each other and all of a sudden 15 guys roll off?
Yeah.
It's better for us. Our best candidates for a result are in that move.
So you're following the general rule of do not chase down your teammates.
Yep.
Yeah, the common one that many people forget. So I guess at this point, when you're halfway through the race, you've been riding a pretty conservative race so far. What do you guys do in terms of like nutrition? You haven't gassed yourself a whole lot quite yet, but it's still been hard work, especially for you in the beginning of that race, Pete. And Jacob, you've been at the front, so it's still been, or toward the front, so it's been active. Do you guys, when you're in a race like this, do you end up just drinking, or do you take on any sort of like the Cliff gels, because you guys are Cliff Bar guys, or anything else, or do you just drink and that's it? It's like a 70-minute crit, right?
Yeah. I'm usually pretty good for 70 minutes. If it's 75 minutes, that's when I start eating. This one was weird. It was just hot enough that I drank about half my water and I sprayed half my water on my legs and head.
Okay.
And I didn't even finish both waters. It was only 80 degrees, a little windy. I felt hot sometimes. I don't know. But nutrition-wise, this was actually pretty straightforward. It wasn't that hard. If the race would have been any harder, it probably would have necessitated a little I would have probably done some shot blocks, maybe like 3 or 6 shot blocks.
Yeah, I had 1 bottle with 2 scoops of hydration mix and 1 bottle just water.
Okay.
And I went through half the hydration mix and a whole bottle of water.
Nice.
And that was it. I didn't.
Did you do anything beforehand in terms of like did you like eat anything?
I had a cappuccino and a muffin.
Nice.
About an hour before, and that was it.
That's the way to do it. I like it.
I had one of those Cliff Organic energy foods, the beet, the beet
Those
one.
ones are good, yeah.
Those are delicious.
That's usually just enough to keep me going.
Really, my kids' sauce packets.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. So looking at this too, right now it looks like the riders themselves, they're getting spread out, but everyone's taking breaks. It looks like in this start-finish straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're also maybe 15th wheel here. Like we're towards the front, and things are starting to happen. Like it's getting faster, more strung out. We're paying a lot more attention to who's up the road, who's moving up.
And the start-finish straight was the best place to drink and do anything. It was long enough that that's where you could ride the start-finish straight with no hands. I mean, if you wanted to.
And the rider in front of you right now, Pete, it looks like that's JD, maybe.
Yeah.
He's a seasoned
You can tell
vet.
by his shape.
that guy's got a lot of racing nous under him, right?
Yes.
Like he knows a lot about how to read a race.
Yeah, and I'm right
And you're
behind
right
the 2
off.
of them, like queuing off of them.
Yeah, so you're looking at this point, Jacob, you're basically like the plan. It looks like Stefan's still up maybe.
Yeah, he's
front.
still up towards the front of the pack, I believe.
So at that point, you guys are just trying to stay close and keep tabs on each other. So then you can react if anything needs to happen.
Exactly.
Is that the one thing I want to ask? Is that ever discouraging for you guys? Do you or are you fully committed to the team move in the sense that like you get into a situation where it's just nope, not going to make the move for myself? How do you guys manage that like as a team? Because that's one thing. A lot of people, if they just race, they're mavericks and they do it on their own.
Yeah.
And then you get into a team situation. Was that hard to adjust to?
I like our team dynamic where I think a lot of us, even me, I work better working for someone for a result. I can get more out of myself, where if I'm the one trying to get the result, I work hard, but not as hard as I would work for Jacob if he was really going for it, like he really wanted to be district champ, or JD or something like that. For whatever reason, I think we're lucky since we're all friends. It's like working hard for your friend rather than for your teammate.
Yeah, and it's kind of takes the pressure off of it. Puts more pressure on you for certain instances. Like if it's my job to cover a move for the first 30 minutes, I'm going to use all of my matches to cover those moves for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Whether I finish the race or not. Like that's what my job is, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that kind of takes the pressure off of being there at the end. If I'm there at the end, I can be of use to the team in a lead out or whatever. That's great. But if my job's to cover moves in the first half hour, like where my matches are going to go.
So essentially it's, other, like you've said before, Pete, other measures of success, like how you did your job during that crit. So it's not necessarily just all about winning for the individual. It changes to how you fulfilled your job. So I can't tell if it looks like Owen maybe is in front of you, Jacob, at this point.
I think
and
that's right.
Owen's your sprinter. So he's been doing a clever job of making sure he stays out of the wind. I assume. Was that a directive basically? Like all of you guys understood like he should not be working at the front?
Right. He shouldn't be in the wind pulling the brake back at this point. Whether it's Pete or I off the front or pulling the brake back, that's what should be happening at this point. We should be up there active.
Yeah.
In the mix. Owen's saving it for the sprint basically.
And actually later you see Owen on the front trying to do a little work because that in about 10 minutes is when we realized that the time gap's not coming down on the breakaway.
They've got it.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like in 5 laps we could bring back 20 seconds. That's kind of the number in my head that I feel 5 laps, 20 seconds.
Totally.
Even you pull back 10 of those seconds on the last lap. So
and you just you come up with that number just because of the experience that you've had with racing, and then you look at the course and you figure.
I mean, it's
roughly.
also having been in a breakaway. And in those last 5 laps, not everyone's going to be putting 100% into the breakaway. So that's when they're going to slow up. You're going to get half those seconds back.
Yeah, so you're counting on that then.
Yeah. And maybe I would say that's a safe bet where maybe Yeah, 20 seconds. If we hear 20 seconds and 5 to go, it's a good shot. So that's sort of not what we're waiting for, but we're still definitely thinking about how we can still win, or right, like it's not lost cause. We're still racing. We still have all our players in the field. There's Stefan next to me. There's Jacob. Like we're all there. We're all near the front. We're ready to go. And at this point, I'm feeling pretty awesome. Like I think this is probably the most confident I felt in the whole races. We're 2/3 of the way through. All of our main players are at the front. We're covering moves. We're doing a good job.
And there it goes. It looks like Riker just went up there, and you're getting pinched off. And you guys are.
I just told, it was Jacob next to me, and I said, counter me. I thought he was Stefan, actually. I wasn't paying attention, and I just saw Jacob there, and I was going to slide through that gap along the fence and cover that move. And I said, get ready for the counter. And then I got pinched into the fence.
And then we both had to slow down a little bit through that start finish. But we make it up right here. I think we passed a few guys.
That looked like a move that you guys kind of wanted to go with, too. I mean, it had some marked men in there.
Especially at this point of the race with who's up there.
Yeah.
Basically, any one of those guys goes, one of us should be with him.
Yeah. So that's kind of a lot of pressure. Like you said, it's pressure concentrated into specific instances.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure just to know that a person can't go up the road without one of you guys there.
Yeah, and there was 4 of us probably in the top 20 here, top 15. So chances are, if I'm on the outside or Pete's on the outside and someone goes on the outside, then that's your cue. That's when you should go.
It looks like, so you make this turn onto the start-finish straight, and it's a long straight. But one thing I've noticed is, number one, that it's common to get pushed darn close to these barriers with the feet, which is probably a little bit scary. But also, you guys are almost always toward those barriers. I assume that's because you're hiding from the wind that you were talking about.
And that outside line that I'm taking from in front of Jacob is the faster line through this corner.
And when you come out of this, it looks like many times you get darn near guttered by people, like kind of pushed into the gutter. I assume that it's the same thing about how you handle the bumps in the road and everything else, like in terms of how you respond in that situation. When somebody gutters you like that, what do you do?
I mean, it depends. If it's a gutter you don't want to be in, that's when you put your elbow out and you push back. Or that gutter was actually pretty clean and you could ride it. And so a lot of times I just rode up that gutter for 50 feet and then jump back on.
Okay.
And you just kind of accept that, taking that outside line, that you're going to exit the corner a little bit wider.
Yeah, we were talking about it after the race, that a lot of these sketchy lines were faster 90% of the time, and the one time they were slower, they were a lot slower.
You lost a lot of wheels,
Yeah, exactly. High consequence lines, right? High risk. So, and it looks like Owen is maybe attached to your rear wheel here, Pete. It could be him. It could be somebody else from the team.
Yeah, that's Owen.
I've noticed when he comes out of a lot of the turns, it looks like, so when he stands out of a decent amount of the turns, but it does not look like he's sprinting hard. It's like I've seen that before with like really, like with sprinters, they're more efficient or comfortable standing to accelerate like that, but they do so without burning a lot of energy.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a quarter sprint for him, or an eighth of a sprint. 600 watts out of the saddle is like nothing. So Owen can just do that over and over again. I bet that's what feels comfortable. So that's Owen raising his hand behind me so that...
Yeah, what is he signifying with that, do you think?
We need some help. Like we need more guys up there.
Gotcha. So that's what he's doing there.
Yep.
That's not the move that you guys do to let Stefan know that he should attack.
If
you didn't hear that story, you can go back and listen to the previous Cliff Bar episode.
Yeah. I think Stefan had been doing a lot of work and had slid back a bit by this point.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to get up to Pete and Owen.
So there's 3 or 4 guys rolling off the front, and that's why Owen was raising his hand, because you can since we're strung out and it's the front of the race, that's what really is the problem. And I'm trying to figure out a way to get closer to the front of the race to try and work to bring that back.
And once again, it looks like you just carried the momentum through that turn a little better, and it's still paying off right now. Even though you're a long way down the straight, it's still paying off, that momentum you carried through.
Yep. And there's Owen on my wheel and kind of protecting and guarding.
And it looks like at this point, Jacob, you've moved up. You moved up quite a lot through that straight, and you're still passing through riders here by taking that outside line.
I realized that there's guys up the road. Pete's on the front. Owen's up there. Like, I need to get up there and do some work, or if I have enough momentum, roll through and join those 3 guys.
Yeah.
And get up the road.
It's that line choice again is paying off, like that outside line.
Exactly.
You guys keep using that like time after time.
Yeah.
And other people don't seem to be latching on.
Yeah. And so here I actually make it up to the front with those guys. There's actually, it looks like there's a Davis kid on the front doing a lot of work, pulling that brake back, and we catch him right here, I think.
And that's, Pete, you're okay with those Davis kids sitting on the front, or just kids in general. Like, you guys probably look for an experience, right?
Yeah.
And try to like encourage and push them to the front.
Yeah,
so
I
to
mean,
speak.
every time someone else will do it, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. Oh, this might be a preem.
Looks like someone's going hard. And you're definitely pulling at the front. Look at that, Pete. You got yourself a gap.
Yeah,
And at this point, Jacob, interesting to know, you are still following wheels here, but you are not. You're doing the right thing by not, pulling people up there.
Yeah.
Right?
See, I'm sitting third wheel right now.
Yeah.
Owen's on the front, and then Mike's, and then me, and I see Pete up the road. So.
And smart Owen is pulling off to try to see if he can get somebody to pull through.
Yeah. So the 3 of us on the front right now have no reason to be putting a lot of power down.
Yep. The Mike's guy is going to relax.
He's going to roll through.
And then that's why the pack's fattening up behind you. So when you see that sort of dynamic, there you go. And Jacob, you're launching. There you go.
Yeah, Jacob's got the counter since I just came back. And actually, Stefan came back when I attacked. So we did a good job here of keeping pressure on.
Yeah.
We want to keep the race rolling fast.
So then you could maybe catch that breakaway at the end.
Right.
And when you're off the front like I am right now, you can pick and choose whichever line you want. And so it's a lot. You can get a lot of seconds.
Yeah.
And because you're riding whatever line you feel like, because you aren't constricted to one line.
That was a smart move by you guys to, when that rider's up the road, you're not second or third wheel, you were kind of sitting a ways back, just building your momentum. So then when you did eventually catch your teammate, you really could put down a meaningful, like a hard effort like that. Because Jacob, people are chasing hard single file to try to catch on.
Yeah, and I think it's a Mike's guy who catches me here. He's shutting it down hard so I don't bridge up to that breakaway.
Yep. Yeah, and looking at this, so you've got a wide open course. Meanwhile, Pete, you're recovering from that hard effort that you did, I assume. And at this point, are you more or less thinking they're going to take care of it at the front? Are you just focusing on recovering, or are you still trying to stay in a good spot?
Sort of, if you can do both. If you can recover and stay near the front, all the better. At the end of the race, it gets harder to do that. And I think I fall pretty far back on this one, actually. It was more about, I think I had just looked and seen how much time was left. Maybe there's 20 minutes left in the race, or I'd heard someone talking about lap cards. And so I decided that effort was hard enough that I probably only had 1 or 2 more of those in me, and I really wanted to save it for the last couple laps. And so this is where I start trying to be as efficient as possible. And I think when we were looking at the power, I probably dropped or saved 20% of my energy by trying to be as efficient as I possibly could for this next 20 minutes. How can I save the most energy? And actually, JD and I were talking about it, how we were going to approach the end. And yeah, if you see, guys are just passing me left and right.
I came back from that break, and I had done a lot of watts for 1.5 laps or so, and I needed to recover if I was going to be a player at the end. And I think I got caught with 12 laps to go or something like that, or 13 laps to go. So
I think we had just seen lap cards. They finally held them up, and it was 13 laps.
13 very short laps.
Yeah. So at that point, that's a good sign and it's a bad sign. Like, I needed to recover as quickly as possible, and then start moving back up.
That makes sense, because you're thinking, okay, we have to reset the board, so to speak, here for the end of this race. So you're going to change that around. Looking at performance analytics, or using the tools that we have there on TrainerRoad, looking at yours, Pete, like where you actually ended up coming, like at the end, that bridging attempt, you really spent a lot of time being constant, whereas the rest of the race, you have a lot of time kind of at zero and coasting, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the difference that you see on those breaks a lot of the time in these courses. Even when there's a bunch of turns, it's just you don't get any time to really bring it down.
Yeah, and all these corners were actually really nice. If you had your own line choice, you could pedal through them all. So it was effectively not a cornery course. or a turny course if you were by yourself.
Meaning that, it didn't have to disrupt your rhythm.
And that's why the breakaway was going so well, right? 3 guys rolling hard through all the corners, pedaling through all the corners, never slowing down and all being committed. That's why they held that 30 seconds the whole time. And this is, I think, it's not alarm bells yet, but we were starting to worry about how it's going to go, or like what's going to happen at the end. There's still another team, Williams Bank or something, and they've got a couple good sprinters, and they didn't make the break, and they usually have 5 guys at the end and then actually wind it up. So I think we're still okay, right? Like, it's still only 3 guys up the road.
Yeah, and there was a lot of horsepower still in the pack.
Yeah, knowing that the pace wasn't as hard and you guys were the ones up the road or kind of at the front doing the work, you probably assumed with how big this race is, chances are there are plenty of people with a lot of power left.
Yeah, and when you hear 20, 25 seconds, you think, oh, give us a few laps. Whether it's our team or someone else's team, that's going to come down really quickly once we get into those last 10 laps.
There's a guy behind you, Jacob, right now, and he has a GoPro on his helmet on the top. I think that's less aero than what you guys have. You guys just mounted him with the K-edge mounts in front, right?
Yeah,
right.
With the
front, one on the front, one under the saddle.
Yeah. So another thing with this, you're getting toward the end of the race. Is this a spot where you have racers that have been hiding in the background? We've seen Owen on camera, but is this where even riders that may have come in and said, guys, I'm not really fit for this race, do you try to tell them to just save it for the end? Or in those situations where racers aren't usually as fit as they should be, do you ask them to burn their matches early?
I think you always burn early. And even we have guys on the team that hadn't raced that much, and it's use it as much as you can, as fast as you can. There's too many things that happen at the end of a race where all of a sudden you just can't get to the front, or it speeds up, or there's a crash or something. And so if you're ever near, like even when Jacob and I were close in miles, we're close to the front. You gotta, if you're there, you gotta try.
Right.
So it's never worth saving it, especially when it doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah. Are there any recovery tricks that you guys employ when you're mid-race like this? Like anything that you focus on, or any specific thing that you do after you do a hard effort like that? I
think for me, it's changing up your cadence. Like when I'm off the front by myself, I'm going to be tucked down super aero, probably spinning around 100, 110 RPM. Putting down a lot of power, and as soon as I come back, I shift down, slide a little further back on the saddle, slow my RPMs, kind of transition what muscle groups I'm using in my legs to try and save a little bit and let my fast twitch muscles, or the muscles I'd just been using to get off the front, kind of recover and relax as much as I can.
Yeah, anything that you do, Pete, too? That's smart, but changing it up, man.
I'm like a parachute. Like if I relax, I pretty much just fall back through the field. And I like moving up in big chunks, anyways. So being 30 guys back or 60 guys back doesn't really matter to me that much. And that rest I get of taking one lap easy is so much, right? Yeah. Like that's really the difference. 1 minute of coasting, or doing threshold and guys just pass you, you feel a lot better after 1 minute. And then, there's 30 guys ahead of you, but it just fans out once and you're back where you were. So you'll see me, and in a lot of races, people have said I go front to back and back to front a lot.
You also coast, even on a course like this where there's, a lot of turns. I've noticed that both of you guys, you coast more than a lot of your counterparts. Like you spend some time, like you do those easy pedal strokes coming in, those few extra, but then that allows you a little bit more coast time. And we've mentioned this plenty of times, but we always look at the time in zones there when we're looking at your ride on TrainerRoad, and the time coasting from fast racers a lot of the time, or clever racers, is higher than the ones, and oftentimes you guys are the ones that finish higher in the race than those that pedal more.
Yep. It's just it's like a good challenge for yourself. If you can pedal less and stay in the race, you're just guaranteeing yourself a better chance.
Yeah. And you'll have the matches there when you need them.
Looking at Miles now, he's in front of you, Jacob. I know Miles is a really good mountain biker before he did crit racing. Well, still is a good mountain biker. Does having a rider like that give you extra confidence when you're going through stuff? Like you figure that Miles isn't going to take a bad line or isn't going to do something like that?
The other best part about Miles is he's kind of like he'll bounce off people and create some space. So if
not afraid to rub elbows.
no, not at all. And so if you're following behind Miles, he cuts a nice draft and he clears the way. So between those two things, I'll follow Miles around anytime.
I'm looking at you, Jacob. Like you just coasted into that turn pretty cleverly there. You saw it fattening up, and
right.
You just gained a bunch of, I should say, space. You didn't, you actually moved up into that pack for relatively no work.
Yeah, there was no pedaling in that.
Yeah,
so that was just coasting through that corner.
But
pedaling a couple more strokes than everyone else going into the corner.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Ooh, and you are in the guttered hard there.
Yeah, that one guy on the left, I remember that kind of pushed me in there.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened.
You flat? Did you flat?
That's when I flatted. That was the end of my race right there.
What a bummer. So you flatted at that point, and how many laps left roughly, do you think?
So I think that was, I
6 or
flatted
7
with 7 laps to go, and technically free laps end with 8 at this race.
Okay, so you figured you were done.
Figured I was done. I ran over to the pit just in case, and he gave me a spare wheel, but it didn't work with my brakes and everything. It was there. I couldn't get back in the race at that point, basically.
Okay, gotcha.
Because free laps were over.
Can we talk about free laps really quick?
Yeah.
So is that something that varies race to race, and is that something that you always like check on beforehand?
They always announce it at the beginning of the race. It's something definitely to keep in mind. If you, like Jacob knew, if he would have flatted on 8 laps to go and he would have rode his flat over, I bet they would have let him in. If he could have got to the pits before they crossed the start line with 8 to go, or before 7 to go, technically, because he would have still been on the 8th lap, then he would have got put in on 6 laps to go with a fresh wheel. And like you don't get a rest flatting. So it's bad and good. Some people, sometimes you get put in well, sometimes it's a rest, sometimes you're just totally screwed after getting flat. You pay attention to it, and the only problem with free laps is I always kind of run the race like if you flat, and you just get the wheel and you go back in. And when you flat, when there's no more free laps, your race is over.
It's just kind of a bummer, right?
Yeah.
So at this point, Jacob, you're just taking your time. If you knew that you could get back in, would you have ridden
I would have just ridden my flat over. I could have been there a lot faster, but I was watching the laps. I was moving up at that point to get to the front, trying to get to the front with 5 laps to go.
Yeah.
I gave myself I think from 10 laps to go to 5 laps to go, I was going to try to get to the front.
Yeah.
And then those last 5 laps, do as much work as I could before the end of the race. And I think it was 7 to go, I flatted.
Yeah.
So I was out.
Yeah. So you're still working your way back over. Now, Pete, at this point, you've lost Jacob. I don't know if you knew that you lost Jacob.
Yeah, it's actually on. I saw him in the gutter and flat, and I was pretty sure that he wasn't going to make it. And there's Stefan flatting off my front.
Really?
Yeah. So Miles and I are there, and I'm trying to go get Miles to go up to the front, and I figure he and I can get up there. And even with Stefan gone, I saw JD next to Owen up the road or near the front, and with Miles and I still there, I'm still thinking we have a good shot of pulling it back. And the field's pretty strung out in front of me, which I remember thinking, well, like I'm gonna have to use some gas to get to the front, and it's okay, even if I can pull half a lap. And so that's me out of the saddle sprinting on the start-finish straight, which is
very rare.
Very rare.
So you're hoping to get up there and to actually, contribute to the final effort that you guys can put forward. But smartly, people are still sprinting over the top of you, and look at that, you're coasting in. You didn't lose anything on them, really.
Yeah.
In fact, there you go. You're verge of gaining.
Yeah, and now I'm about to take some sketchy lines to try to move up.
And I think that's probably why I flatted. At that point, when you're trying to get to the front, you're taking every inch of possible road you can use.
Yeah.
And you're taking a lot more sketchy lines, like Pete said, than you would in the first half of the race.
Yeah.
And you're riding the potholes, you're riding wherever it takes to get to the front.
And to be fair, I actually heard from somebody that was just hanging out at the start-finish area, and they said that it was a non-stop river of riders coming in there because of flats on this course, because it was just so rough.
And so what just happened was, I'm pretty sure it was me bouncing on my rear wheel. And then,
oh no, you too?
Yeah. And then, so Dave Grunneman, he used to be on Cliff Bar. He says,
man.
"You look pretty soft." And
he meant the tire.
he meant, he might have meant both. And so I knew that I was pretty sure they weren't going to let me back in, but you got to try, right? Like if the pit guy wasn't paying attention and
you were right toward the end anyway.
And it was right towards the end. And then you can see him say, I think it's the moto guy.
Yep, he gave you the cut.
Yeah. So actually what happened here is I went back to the pit. Even though I knew free laps were over, I went in and acted like I didn't know free laps were over.
Nice.
The guy gave me a wheel and gave me a push back in. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm back in the race. So I would have been a lap down.
Huh.
And I started to get back into the race, and I realized that my brake was so wide. I had no rear brake. I couldn't do it. So I dove into that first corner. I was like, okay, I can't race this course with no rear brake.
So I guess you guys ended up missing out on this. How did it end up for the team? Do you guys know?
Yeah, they actually never ended up catching the break. One guy bridged across.
In the last 3 laps.
In the last 3 laps.
Wow.
Oh, and Owen got 8th. He got 5th in the...
Miles with the tip there.
Yeah.
Off camera.
He did get... I think he was 4th in the bunch kick.
Nice.
And there was 3 or 4 guys up the road. So I think he got 8th. But one guy did make it across. So the field was 10 seconds behind on the actual finish sprint. But one guy made it across, and I think he still got 3rd. He bridged across, but
on one of the toughest districts or strongest districts in the U.S. That's pretty awesome at district champs.
Yeah, not bad. I think as a overall feeling after the race, we were pretty bummed.
To have 3 of us out of contention for the last critical laps was not ideal.
And that's definitely one of those things where we were all saving it for the end, and then it doesn't pan out.
Right.
So that's why we usually race the other way. Stack the odds at the beginning.
So. Pete, I want to look at your race overall since you have power meter from that or power data from that. So you had a normalized power of 329 watts, an average of 302. So 30 watt difference almost between the two of them, which is a pretty decent amount there. 0.97 IF, which is that's a really hard race for an hour long. Some interesting stuff though. If you look at the time and zones that you had, once again, you spent almost 6 minutes coasting, almost 10%, which is really impressive. And that's just counting the race. That's not counting obviously the flat tire section. That's way more than what most people would think, even on a tourney crit. So that just shows. And then look at it. It's weighted, right? Where you spent so much time, nearly 30% of your time anaerobic, and then 22% of your time way down in, active recovery. 15% down in your endurance power zone. So not a lot of time in between.
Yeah, you're either going all out or just keeping pressure on the pedals. And so a lot of those attacks were, 300 watts. You just keep 300 watts on the pedals and you're at the front or off the front.
Yeah.
But this is kind of one of those races. I like the on or off races more.
Same here.
So even though I'm a diesel guy, that's why I ride it momentum wise, where you're just staying fast. But those big kicks, I think that's kind of fun. I really like this course and this race, to be honest. I've always enjoyed racing the 4th of July.
Nice.
So but this was probably the most lackluster end to it
exactly.
in the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, most of us crashed in it, so that was maybe worse.
I still feel like I learned a lot from this. One of the things that I learned, just even though I've already, I know this because I hear this, but seeing it in action is how efficient you guys are in keeping your momentum into turns, line choice, and how you're really like examining every aspect of the course and every square inch of it. Then the other thing that I learned too is about like making a plan and then sticking to a plan like that. Yeah. And it works out how it works out. Yeah. But, at the very least, it's cool to see like team members like commit to something and then execute on it. And I guess as a fellow teammate, that's all you can ask of your other teammates is just whatever job you have, just commit to it,
Yeah. So. And when people do their job, it's the most amazing thing. Like,
when it works out, it
feels so good. Everybody feels good about their part, which is cool. It's not just one guy won. It's everybody did their job and we won.
Right. Well, good job, guys. Thanks
thank
for
you.
sharing this race for us and everything else. If you want to watch more of these, if you want to actually, we could assign certain tasks too. What I mean by that is like if you want to see what happens and Pete takes a like first lap flyer, just let us know. We'll put a GoPro on his bike and we'll send him into a crit and he'll do it. Or if you want to see any sort of tactics, whatever you want to see, just let us know. Just go down in the comments below and let us know what you want to see. If you want to share this video out with people, please do. It's good stuff to watch during workouts, and if we're bike racers, we should be watching this sort of stuff because this is just like football players watch tape. We need to be watching tape of these races, right? You can learn a lot. So if this is your first time figuring or finding out about TrainerRoad and just seeing this crit racing thing, head over to TrainerRoad.com to see what we are all about and all the analytics we've been checking out. We appreciate you joining us for this one. We'll talk to you all next time.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.